The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, April 28th. And today is a Global Pay It Forward Day today, you guys.
That's a nice one.
Yeah. Right? Extra nice. Extra nice. It's also National Superhero Day today, you guys. Nothing on that, huh?
Hey.
What's that?
Oh, nothing.
Okay.
Day.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's see. It's also National Bravehearts Day. That's a big one. Shout out to all the kids that are known as Bravehearts. That's all the kids that are like, yeah. That's all the kids that are going through. No, that's all the kids that are going through like at St. Jude Medical Center and things like that.
Oh, okay. It's not like the movie.
No, nothing like the movie. No.
Although
okay, so nobody's
like the
lifting their
movie,
kilts up and screaming, right?
No.
What if I paid extra?
I don't know. Well, you could start by turning your camera sideways. That would be helpful. Yep, that's much better.
Well,
Thank you so much. It's also National Blueberry Pie Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that pie always has a day. It doesn't matter if it's rhubarb or whatever. There's always a pie day.
You know, I have rhubarb growing in my backyard.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
My ex-husband got a kidney stone. It was from rhubarb. Careful, you know.
Yeah. It's also National Great Poetry Reading Day.
Oh, nice. Okay. What's your favorite poem, Jason Beck?
My favorite, I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite poem, but you know what I did like? I did like when Russell Simmons did the Deaf Poetry Jam. I thought that was pretty interesting and unique.
Okay. All right, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
We like that. We like it.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for...
And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms today. And we are going to kick it off with Mr. Jesse Barney. He's the founder of Barney Design Co. and that can help elevate your brand to new plateaus and heights. He's also the brand new grandfather. Coming up next is none other than Mr. Grandpa Barney himself, Mr. Jesse Barney.
That's so hilarious. I never would have thought I was being introduced as grandpa. But here we are.
Yeah, right?
I know. It's pretty amazing. All right. My story comes out of Axios Richmond this morning. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart as a parent of 6 teenagers, almost 7. Teen weed vaping spikes in Virginia schools. A troubling trend is playing out in local high schools, according to parents and experts. Teens are vaping weed and weed like products. While teen nicotine vaping hits a 10-year low last year, teen vaping of marijuana or marijuana like substances is quickly replacing it as the alarming vice of choice for kids, research suggests. Michelle Peace, a VCU forensic science professor who's been studying vaping and cannabis use for a decade, has been tracking the vaping shift in schools research. Since 2019, Peace has headed up a program that tests vape pens found or confiscated in K through 12 schools across the state. School administrators collect them and ship them in for regular testing. The results, she tells Axios, are revealing. Of the first batch of vape pen samples collected by schools in fall of 2019, 100% contained nicotine. Just 1% of those first 75 samples also tested positive for some form of cannabis. In mid-2023, 14% of the 107 samples tested contained cannabis or a cannabis-like substance. Half of those were synthetic cannabinoids like Delta-8 and Delta-9, as opposed to products derived from cannabis plants. 86% of samples contained nicotine. By fall 2023, 19% of the 253 vape pen samples collected from Virginia's K through 12 schools contained a weed or weed-like substance. Nicotine vapes dropped to 81%. Results of last year's batch of samples are still being finalized. The vape samples submitted for Peace's program are coming from all levels of K through 12 schools, including the ones that contain cannabinoids. Of the last batch, 78% from high schools, 14% from middle schools, and 2% were sent in from Virginia elementary schools. In Richmond, teen weed vaping isn't just happening in one school or district, nor is it limited to public schools. It's happening on the bus, in the parking lot, and sometimes openly in the classroom. But most often, it seems, in school bathrooms. Multiple Richmond area parents tell Axios. Two local parents tell us the bathroom situation has gotten so bad, their kids hold it until they get home so they don't have to be exposed to the weed vapes or feel pressured into. Part of the issue with teen vaping overall is how easily kids can access the products, says Caroline Cobb, director of VCU's health psychology program and part of Peace's team. Their research tracks where students say they got the vapes. The most common response is from a friend, followed by direct purchase. That's a lie. The direct purchase portion is especially worrying, Cobb says. Kids can simply walk into one of the many vape and tobacco shops across Richmond and buy these products. Once they do, they tell their friend where to go and so on. That's not what's happening. I know from experience. Synthetic THC products like Delta-8 are illegal in Virginia, as is the buying and selling of recreational weed and nicotine to anyone. Another issue, Cobb says, is that some parents seem to turn a blind eye to it, shrugging off trying weed as a normal part of high school. But today's vape products are very different than whatever the teens' parents likely smoked. Many of the products the researchers test contain highly concentrated synthetic chemicals that are not FDA approved for any consumption, plus methamphetamines, ethanol, synthetic coolants, and other dangerous ingredients that, unsurprisingly, aren't great for developing kids. Plus, existing enforcement efforts like bathroom vape detectors often don't work because by the time an adult responds, the kids are gone or it's unclear which kid had the vape to begin with. The vapes are so small, they're easy to conceal, Cobb notes, or the kids simply flush them. The researchers have received vape samples containing whole sections of toilets with the vapes still lodged in the pipes. What we're watching, while prevention work exists, Cobb notes that some programs, including the Virginia Tobacco Control Program, just lost their funding. What's ultimately needed, Cobb says, is a strong prevention program aimed at teens and a strong intervention arm to help the kids that are already using. She said she's heard good things about Catch My Breath, a youth vaping prevention program developed for students grades 5 through 12, as well as a tiered intervention initiative that Henrico is. The researchers also tell Axios that they'd like to see more enforcement of vape shops, better education and awareness about the dangers of synthetic cannabinoids, and more research and attention on vaping. And that closes the story. Well, I know for a fact, because my teenagers are very honest with me, that these teenagers are not going into vape shops and just buying. What they have is somebody who is over 18 or over 21, depending on the state. And that person is going into these shops and buying large amounts of these things. And then that person is turning around and starting a shop on Snapchat or Telegram. And then they spread that Snapchat or Telegram channel and they become a plug on Snapchat or Telegram. So one of the real main culprits here is mobile phone use and smartphone use, and parents who allow their kids to have any and every app on their phone and do not police or maintain or monitor the phone. So really one of the core problems here is smartphone use amongst teens. And that's one of the things that they really should be looking at. And it's surprising to me that the kids duped these people in this community of Richmond, Virginia, and they didn't turn over what's really going on. They kept the secret that it's all on their phone. So that's what's going on, and I'll turn it over to you guys and see what you have to say.
Oh man!
Oh boy, Jesse, those damn kids.
Yeah, we got two parents on today, so I feel like I should let you guys go first, unless you guys want me to go.
I mean, I go straight up for my son's phone is super locked down. Like he has to send me a screen time request for any app he wants to download. Like he's 12, so hopefully I have a little bit before he's trying to buy, dank vapes in the bathroom. But it's you have to watch your kids. You have to stay involved. And you have to have conversations, and I think that's the best preventive measure.
Go for it, Yarrow.
Well, as a parent, it's apparent to me that there's a couple things that are missing.
I see what you did there. That was pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah, first cup of coffee makes me feel kind of smart. And so, or at least sassy. So first thing we need to take into account is part of the reason why we're seeing a trend down in nicotine vapes with kids is because of Zins, or crystalline nicotine, which is a new form factor which has taken over the youth tobacco market. And so as we see a decrease in tobacco vaping, it doesn't mean that we're seeing a decrease in teen nicotine consumption. There is a new form factor that is bringing in new youth tobacco or nicotine users, as well as cannibalizing those existing nicotine vaping minors and bringing them into Zins. For those that don't know, Zins is sort of like a sublingual that has crystalline nicotine at strengths that are much higher than nature intended, and is a continued migration away from the smoke and heat not burn methods of ingestation and into a way that it appears to once again be a smoking cessation tool, and the kids are going crazy over it, and it's pretty bad. Now, if cannabis was also available in that type of form factor, maybe we would have some parity and we'd be able to sort of look at these things and say and contrast them. And that's not the case. The other thing that I think is very interesting about this article is halfway through it talks about in mid 2023, 14% of the 107 samples contained cannabis, and that by the fall of 2023, they had 1.5 times more collected vapes, meaning they went from 107 samples to 253 samples. And of that increase of 1.5x samples, the amount of cannabis vapes went up by an additional 4%, from a total of 14%. I'm sorry, 5%, from a total of 14% to a total of 19%. So they took in a lot more vapes that they confiscated in that year, and there wasn't that much of an uptick to the cannabis, really. It didn't go substantially up. So I think it's a little, I don't want to say disingenuous, but to say that the cannabis vapes are on the rise compared to the other, it doesn't seem like it's a statistically significant increase over that year. And then the thing that came up for me is it talked about how they were shipping these vapes to have them tested. And I thought to myself, you know, they really probably need a compliance person. Maybe Jenny's available when she's not golfing, because I don't think you're allowed to ship cannabis through the mail. And I hope that they don't get in trouble for that.
Well, not only that, but they have a pretty stringent protocol on shipping vape cartridges. I mean, that's one of the things that they specifically ask you anytime you ship anything with the USPS is if there's any lithium batteries in your package.
So, you know, I was like, nails on chalkboard, don't ship your weed, dude, even if it's stuff you confiscated.
I mean, what, you know... Jesse, did you say something about a meth vape? Because that just sounds out of like really weird to me and like a lot of propaganda.
But they said that there's multiple different types of vaporizers where they have different things, not just cannabis.
Not just cannabis. So they didn't. I mean, because like there is DMT vapes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm sure that there's a lot of different vapes. I've even heard of cocaine vapes.
Cocaine that wouldn't work, really, would it?
Yeah, you can smoke it.
Really? Okay. All right. Interesting. Interesting.
And there's forms of opium and stuff that you can vaporize. So the technology is getting away from us. We're all older. We don't use these things. We're not into this, and the way that these things spread through apps like Snapchat and Telegram and Signal and various others, the kids really have a handle on this. They know what they're doing. They're very technologically savvy, and they know how to do this kind of marketing, and nobody knows what's going on.
You know, we are 18 minutes into this show. We haven't even had so much as a spat or disagreement. So allow me to do shots fired.
Oh, go for it, please.
One of the things that this article talked about, was that the Virginia Tobacco Prevention Program for Youth, which had been around for 20 years, had just lost their funding from the Trump administration. And that the Trump administration decided that this 20-year-old program in Virginia to prevent minors from consuming tobacco, that the Trump administration pulls $300 million in health funding from Virginia. So it was promised to Virginia universities and agencies, but just not paid out yet. And they just slashed it.
It probably was because it was being misappropriated for other things and wasn't going to actually doing anything in regards to. They couldn't demonstrate that their numbers were going down. But I have seen on the news some interesting commercials that I believe the Trump administration has been putting out in regards with vaping and the hardware that they're using and them coming from China and this and that. And so maybe they reappropriated the funding to these commercials.
I love the way you try to find a way to make it make sense. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
It may just also be that he doesn't give a shit. I mean, that too.
Well, you know what? If you remember, a number of years ago, when they banned Juul, you know what I mean? A whole bunch of the younger generation got really mad at Trump for banning the flavor vape cartridges and whatnot. There was a whole big little uproar for a while about that.
Oh, I'm glad you think I'm young, Jason.
No comment.
My family was all very upset about that.
See?
I mean, it's harm reduction, right? It's at least I'm just fucking myself up, with whatever this thing might do to my innards. I'm not going to make Yarrow and everybody around me smell like a cigarette or make them breathe it in. So I feel like it's harm reduction.
I just wanted to make sure that nothing interfered with my family jewels.
Oh, boy. And on that, we are going to roll into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh, man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Test it. It's not a name, it's a promise.
It's that you can tell that that's not a fake
and
background.
We are back, you
Looks
guys.
great.
We are back, you guys.
Thank you, Yarrow. All right, up next, you guys, we got the High at 9 head honcho, my best buddy, you know, the biggest Trump sympathizer in all of the land.
Sympathizer?
And maybe Elon's Doge replacement, Jason Beck.
Oh, that is funny, Jenny Beth, because there are a lot of people that call me the Doge for the efficiencies that I put into place on things. So that
all right, no cap and gowns. You're not graduating. Okay, cap off.
No cap. Stop the cap, Jenny Beth. Well, let me tell you something, you guys. Man. I got a few stories for you guys today. So this is some interesting news because a federal judge rules that medical cannabis isn't covered by insurance, you guys. That's right. Patients with behavioral health conditions cannot make insurance claims for medical cannabis, a federal judge ruled on April 23rd in the U.S. District Court in New Mexico. Judge Martha Vasquez granted a motion by 3 health insurance providers to dismiss a complaint by a New Mexico cannabis company and 4 individuals who pay out of pocket for medical cannabis to treat behavioral health conditions. 3 of the individuals were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, while the 4th individual is a father whose child has nonverbal autism. Other qualifying conditions for medical cannabis in New Mexico, such as opioid use disorder, severe anorexia, and Parkinson's disease, are also considered behavioral health conditions in New Mexico. And New Mexico Top Organics, a vertically integrated cannabis company doing business as Ultra Health Incorporated, filed the lawsuit back in 2022, arguing that under state law that became effective that year, insurance companies that cover behavioral health services are required to fully cover the cost of medical cannabis used for behavioral health issues. Velasquez was not convinced, however. In a quote, "This court finds that New Mexico state law does not compel health insurance coverage of medical cannabis, and that, even if it did, such a requirement would be preempted by federal law," the judge wrote in a Wednesday ruling. For 3 reasons alone, the court must grant defendants' motion to dismiss and thus need not address defendants' remaining arguments, they said. The defendants listed in the lawsuit include Blue Cross and Blue Shield of New Mexico, Presbyterian Health Plan Incorporated, and Western Sky Community Care Incorporated. The state law that Velasquez referred to is Senate Bill 317, which Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham signed into law on April of 2021, and the legislation intended to make mental and behavioral health services more affordable for New Mexicans by eliminating all cost sharing and out-of-pocket costs for those services and accompanying medications. Although SB 317 doesn't specifically mention medical cannabis, it includes language that all medications, and Senator Martin Hickey, Democrat from Albuquerque, a retired physician who sponsored the legislation, indicated in early 2022 that he intended the law to include insurance coverage for medical cannabis patients with certain conditions. In a quote, "The health plan is not on the hook for it unless it is a clinician who is prescribing authority authority by a license and is credentialed by a health plan, Hickey told the Santa Fe New Mexican that year, adding that the law does not apply to cannabis patients who receive Medicaid coverage due to the federal illegality of cannabis. Velasquez ruled in this week's decision that the bill's language was not explicit, and rather the judge found that SB 317 requires that insurance plans that cover behavioral health services not impose any cost sharing on those services. This language suggests that the prohibition on cost sharing applies only to those behavioral health services that the insurance provider already covers, Velasquez wrote. And in an additional quote, she says, whether the intent of the statute was to include medical cannabis, as is suggested by the article quoting the bill sponsor, the language of the statute does not do so, she says. Velasquez did not acknowledge that New Mexico state courts have held that medical cannabis constitutes a reasonable and necessary health care service from healthcare provider and must be covered under New Mexico's Workers' Compensation Act. The federal judge also recognized that the Court of Appeals of New Mexico found that medical cannabis should qualify as a prescription drug for tax deduction purposes under state law. However, the defendants argued that the state law on the issue of cannabis is preempted by federal law, prohibiting its use as a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substances Act, and the judge agreed. Although the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found that cannabis does not have a currently accepted medical use in the U.S., after conducting a scientific and medical evaluation of the plant under President Joe Biden, recommending that it be relisted to Schedule III, Velasquez indicated in this week's ruling that the Drug Enforcement Administration has yet to take up that recommendation. In a quote, by virtue of its classification as a Schedule I drug, Congress has decreed that cannabis has no medical use, she wrote in an additional quote, even accepting as the true for the sake of argument that cannabis does have medical value, state law still does not compel defendants to provide coverage for it. The fact that the medical cannabis is not explicitly covered in the state's benchmark plan signifies that state law does not mandate coverage of it, she says. Despite this ruling, legislation that's currently advancing in the New Mexico legislature, House Bill 527, would amend state law and New Mexico's insurance code to require medical cannabis to be covered by public and private insurers, and including individual and group health plans, Medicaid and state coverage offered to state and local government employees, educators, and retirees. Since Medicaid is a joint state-federal program, there would be no federal Medicaid match for medical cannabis under the bill, which advanced through New Mexico's Health and Human Services Committee last month. And however, Vasquez ruled this week that even if New Mexico law did compel insurance providers to cover the cost of medical cannabis, such a law would be preempted by federal prohibition under the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution. In a quote, she says, by providing coverage for medical cannabis, defendants would be aiding and abetting illegal drug procurement, the judge wrote. The likelihood of whether defendants would be prosecuted for that crime is irrelevant, and the criminalization of cannabis at the federal level remains intact and therefore would conflict with state law mandating coverage of medical cannabis, you guys. Well, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. New Mexico, I feel like you guys kind of jumped the gun on this one in regards to trying to get this covered by insurance, but I do appreciate your efforts, but I actually kind of agree with the judge, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I mean, it's not just
judge.
What's that, Jesse?
You agree with the judge?
I do agree with the judge that that because cannabis is a Schedule I drug, that the insurance isn't mandated to cover it for that main reason of the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution.
I mean, that's a technicality, but if the judge had any education at all, it would know that there's been proven medical use and that Schedule I is ridiculous.
I understand that, but just because there's proven medical use doesn't mean that it has been moved in the Controlled Substances Act, and that's what they're governing off of federal law.
Right, it's a legal technicality.
Yeah. And so, I'm not saying that I personally agree that I do wish that medical cannabis was covered by insurance, but I also understand the parameters by which that would things would need to change in order to do so. And so I actually agree with this judge ruling. I think she made the correct ruling on it. That's all that I'm saying.
Well, but this was a spot where the judge could have actually been an activist in the right way.
Yeah, we've been seeing what happened to activist judges lately.
Well, look, I mean, activist judges code for you don't like what the judge said, right? If
no,
the
it's
judge
not.
Affirms, yeah, absolutely. If the judge affirms what you believe, then it's just confirmation bias and they're doing their job. Here's the bigger picture.
Go for it, Yarrow.
66% of all personal bankruptcies in the United States are attributed to medical debt. We have a much bigger issue that needs to be solved, not just for chemo patients and not just for people who want medical cannabis, but for anybody who's ever going to be sick in this country. We have a broken system. It is not America being great again. It is actually probably the biggest black eye, short of some of our foreign policy missteps, that we have a for-profit healthcare system that doesn't prioritize wellness and people living and enjoying their lives and having some semblance of a safety net so that if and when somebody gets sick, it doesn't have to be a life-changing event beyond the medical issues that they're tasked with overcoming. And so, cannabis not being accepted by health insurance, we still have such a high percentage of our gross GDP towards making money off of either keeping people sick or getting them well. And it's a travesty. And one of the world's biggest religious leaders passed away in the last week. And whether that's your religion or not, maybe we could take a moment to pause and reflect and think about how we want the world to be better in the future. And if we want this country to be better, we need to stop thinking of healthcare as a for-profit model where people go bankrupt.
I agree with that part. Yarrow, the fact with the bankruptcy. Jenny Beth, what do you got to say about this?
No, I completely agree, and I also actually agree with the judge. I think through the letter of the law, she made the correct ruling. It's an unfortunate situation, and I appreciate the effort that was made by New Mexico, and they're not the only state who's tried to push this through. But sadly, I think all those people who have lobbied for insurance companies to cover medical cannabis should now switch that lobbying effort and that activist effort to a full deschedule on the federal level, because if they want those things to be a reality, they have to happen.
Exactly right. I totally agree with you on that, Jenny Beth. We need to be pushing for the full descheduling of cannabis, and these types of issues would not be an issue anymore, Yarrow. Just saying.
Yes, these types of issues would not be an issue anymore. And the judge was able to easily rule that this conflicted with federal law. And even when it becomes federally legal, if that's what happens, we still have a healthcare system that's so broken that the cost of cannabis will be just like the cost of insulin or just like the cost of an EpiPen. And until we start addressing a deeper foundational issue about whether people need to make as much money as they are on keeping people sick or healthy, we're going to have a big issue this country hasn't yet solved.
Fair enough. And on that, Jenny Beth, do you want to introduce Yarrow next?
Of course.
Amazing.
The angriest elf on the high at 9 shelf, fresh from under his lily pad, Yarrow Kubrin.
Oh, you got a lily pad? You got a lily pad, Yarrow? That's cute.
So my daughter's name is Lily, and we had this painting in her room when she was younger that said lily pad. This is my little room. It was pretty
oh, that's cute. But, that's cute.
I know. I feel like pulling it out of the garage and putting it behind me for the next show. So when I get that intro, I can really lean in, right?
I love it.
Well, good morning, High at 9 News viewers. Monday, April 28th, rounding out the 9:30 time slot. My article is direct from the East Coast and probably isn't news. I can already hear my cohort Jenny saying nothing burger, but I'm on a keto diet, so let's eat these burgers. All right. Cost of weed products in New York drops as legal marijuana industry booms. That's news. When they get high, prices go low. This is by the New York Post. Concentrates are each down 15% over last year, while edibles and flavored cannabis decreased by 14% and 5% respectively, according to an analysis by the State Office of Cannabis Management. As the market has grown to over 500 brands and nearly 370 stores open, we have begun to see average retail prices fall in several leading categories, including flowers, edibles, concentrates, and vaporizers. John Kiega, OCM's Executive Director of Market Policy, Innovation, and Analytics, told the Post. The decline in prices, he said, is likely due to an increase in the number of brands with value pricing and lowering costs as they compete for shelf space and market share. Notice he didn't indicate that taxes might be a reason why the consumer needs more value at the cash register. There are now 368 licensed weed dispensaries in the Empire State, up from 245 and just 41 stores back in 2023. Retailers are adjusting their prices as part of their competitive strategy as more locations have opened, he said. While it remains a little early to determine all the factors driving the retail price compression, it is common to see price compression as new markets mature and competition intensifies. All right, Kiega, it's not early to determine what's going on because you just have to look at more mature markets. So that, come on now. The average price of 3.5 grams of flowered cannabis dropped from $41 to $38, the analysis showed. Meanwhile, 1 gram of concentrates plunged from $58.92 to $50.30, and 1 gram of vapes decreased from $64 to $55. Think about that. A 1 gram vape cart, $55. That's still ridiculously expensive. That's a gift to the bodegas, not to the regulated market. And the price of edibles such as gummies and chocolate bars plummeted from $29.58 to $25.46, according to the data. Kiega said the price drops are good news for consumers and the market and bad news for illegal weed sellers. I'm going to read that again. I almost threw up on that line. The gentleman at the OCM said the price drops are good news for consumers and the market and bad news for illegal weed sellers. Lower prices indicate a growing diversity of products available in the market, Kiega said. They increase affordability for consumers, and they enable the illegal markets to compete more effectively against the illicit market. Sounds like a guy who went to school but doesn't ever spend time on the streets. One cannabis merchant said he lowered the prices at his shop after wholesalers, farmers, and processors dropped their wholesale prices. It comes down to market share. The gentleman who's the CEO of the cannabis place in Middle Village said everyone is competing for a smaller piece of the pie. It's good for consumers to make the price more competitive with the illegal market. It makes an alternative. It's a good alternative for consumers. The dramatic ramp in cannabis retail dispensaries after the rocky rollout of 2023 and early 2024 means licensed stores are now generating less revenue per month. Sales revenue per store peaked at $600,000 last August, and in February, the sales were down to $351,000. Total retail sales hit $1.5 billion since the first licensed pot store opened at the end of 2022, but retail sales are on pace to reach $1.5 billion alone just for calendar year 2025. New York approved the law in 2021 legalizing the sale of marijuana for recreational use. Okay. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News. I'd like to hear what my other guests, panelists, pundits, and cohorts think about this story today.
So am I hearing this correctly, Yarrow, that the trap market is complaining that prices are down? Is it?
No, what you're hearing is that the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, is suggesting that price compression, someone's going to have to mute up or I'm going to lose my shit. They're suggesting that price compression in the regulated market is going to help support the regulated market by decreasing sales in the trap. They're not wrong that a lower price at the cash register is always better for consumer. They are wrong about what the impact on the illicit market is going to be by modest price compression while we still have this massive difference based on taxes. The fact that the gentleman didn't bring up tax structure, tax relief at all means he's drinking out of the regulatory Kool-Aid because taxes are something that he's still a part of that mechanism, still a part of that paradigm, still a part of that structure by which taxes support the trap and decrease participation in the regulated market. Now, of course, that's my opinion, but Monday morning, I don't think I'm wrong.
You're not alone in that opinion. I mean, I've had multiple operators through multiple states and tell me in multiple different areas of the game, why the fuck am I paying for this license? Why don't I just go back to trapping? We're not making any money.
Yeah.
And yeah, price compression is going to happen. So I agree with you, Yarrow. This is a nothing burger, like, boom. But I appreciate you sharing the story, and I always appreciate you being here out front of the lily pad.
I mean, yeah, price compression.
Oh, looky blood.
Yeah, price compression is ultimately inevitable. That is for sure, and especially when you have all of these markets scaling. I mean, when California was the sole main producer for the overall market overall, prices were way up. Then you have all these states that like mass overproduce, like Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma. You know what I mean? All across the country. You know what I mean? Even Michigan and Ohio. You know what I'm saying? Producing, and now it swallows up the market, and now basically everybody just has a plug because everyone is trying to still sell everything, and the regulated market isn't big enough to satisfy the appetite of the producers.
I think the critical difference is price compression needs to be measured not against previous prices, but against the illicit market. And what the illicit market has done is delivered better quality at a lower cost. So I don't define quality as devoid of equal 20, and maybe it's not clean or safe, but if you're looking at potency, quality, quickness to market, and cost, the illicit market has been running circles around the regulated market. And so I think that what we really need to see is a way in which the taxes aren't preventing regulated producers from providing value. Not just good, but also value. Until we see that, we're going to continue to bemoan that customers are always looking at the potency label because they're trying to get the best bang for their buck.
Fair enough. I agree with you, Yarrow. The taxes are the biggest issue in this whole thing that allow for the illicit market to thrive and you stay alive as long as it has. And until that gets addressed by regulators and governments and whatnot, we're just continue to see more and more of the same. And it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough.
Imagine the lunacy of charging very high taxes on regulated cannabis, so that you can take some percentage of that tax money and enforce against the illicit market.
Yeah, exactly.
How is that a solution?
It's the same solution that they've always had. And we did get a super chat, and I do want to read this. Brandon from Brandon Krieger, thank you so much for the super chat. We very much appreciate it. He says, "We push for legalization to honor people like Mike Althafer." I'm sorry if Altafer is how he says it. I apologize if I murdered the name. Mike Altafer, who lost his life while still operating in an illegal market. Rest easy and happy birthday, little brother. Full D schedule. And so rest in peace to Mike. That's very, very sad. And we do appreciate the super chat, Brandon. Thank you for bringing that to note. Any comments? Jenny Beth?
No, just matter of respect, and I don't have personally any judgment against anybody who's choosing to be in the illicit market. I do have a lot of judgment against the tax structure of the licit market. That's my axe to grind. That's the anger that hopefully gets conveyed every single time I get an opportunity to hop on the mic.
I'm with that.
They're ruining the opportunity of regulated cannabis by looking at it as just this big fat cash cow with which to fill the coffers and create more government.
I totally agree with you on that. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Backdrop is so epic today. I love it.
Oh yeah, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it, you'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And if you really want to make some liberals cry, make sure that you get some Liberal Tears energy beverage. 0 calories, 0 sugar. all gas, no brakes. Get some today. The link to purchase is in the description of this video, and you might even see a little QR code up above on one of these stories that you can use to purchase that, and make sure you order some to your door today.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Back just in the nick of time.
And we are back, you guys, and we are rolling right into Miss Jenny Beth Dills, who is coming to you live from the Blunts and Birdies golf tournament in beautiful Huntington Beach, California. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis and of Justice Served, a 501c3 that helps justice-impaired individuals, and it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
All right, so we're going to talk about Wes Moore again, because big changes are coming to Maryland's cannabis scene, but with a twist. This one makes no sense to me. Governor Wes Moore has officially signed off on legislation that will allow up to 15 marijuana consumption lounges across the state. However, the catch is no smoking allowed. The new law, Senate Bill 215, limits the lounge's offerings to only single-serve cannabis edibles and beverages. No joints, no vapes, and patrons cannot take leftovers with them. Plus, lounges can only open in cities or counties that pass their own local approval. The permits are reserved for social equity applicants, and the state's rules are some of the strictest in the country. The bill also sets a 5 milligram cap on THC in marijuana beverages and tweaks licensing rules to encourage employee ownership and strengthen the social equity supply chain. Whether these lounges will succeed remains to be seen, especially as other states like Colorado and Nevada have struggled to make cannabis lounges a lasting business. For now, Maryland is taking a cautious but deliberate step forward in shaping its cannabis industry. This is absolutely ridiculous. So, Yarrow, do you want to meet me at the Cannabis Lounge and have a 5 milligram drink? Because I bet it's $30, and I guarantee neither of us will be high afterwards.
Honestly, just being seen in public at a consumption lounge with you would make me high. And I think what we're paying for is we're the canaries in the coal mine. We're like the little guinea pigs where we get to pay a premium just to be able to do things in the open that we used to not be able to do in the open. And if that means paying a little bit more extra to be at a consumption lounge, I'm willing to do that. Mm-hmm. I do think that the consumption lounge model, like, to me, the person who appears to be the most knowledgeable is a gal named Sarah Stewart. Y'all can find her on LinkedIn. And I think that she's really been at the bleeding edge of the conversations around how consumption lounges can function properly. And what I've heard her say in the past, and maybe her opinion has been updated since the last time, was that these aren't really big profit drivers for dispensaries so much as they're ways to get people in the door and to get people to spend at your dispensary versus somebody else's dispensary. And that if there is margin in it, it's going to be based on the accoutrements, the chips and food and other little things. I think that the potency limits are interesting. I think for beverages, things that are not immediate onset, it probably makes sense. But yeah, I mean, Jenny, if there's a consumption lounge and you're sending me a ticket, I'm packing my bags, my neck pillow, and I'm there with you. And
trying to get flued out is crazy.
This is just absolutely asinine to me that they're going to pass something like this. I mean, you might as well just call it a restaurant. And that serves beverages, like what they're doing in Minnesota by allowing all the liquor stores to sell cannabis beverages. Like, this to me is the equivalent of that. Like, you cannot call this a consumption lounge. This is not real consumption just because you can have an edible or a beverage. This is just totally stupid. And really, to me, it totally devalues the whole license.
It's not stupid. It's a way of saying that you've done it without actually doing it. You're like, oh, we've stood up consumption lounges. We've gave these social equity operators a head start, but you haven't really done it.
No,
right?
it's
and the thing is that the HVAC technology has already existed such that people could be smoking big tree inside. So it's not like we have to wait for the technology to catch up with making a combustible consumption lounge where people can enjoy a variety of ways to consume cannabis. But this is that way of saying, oh, we've done consumption lounges. And to the non-informed, they're like, oh, you see, they're being progressive and they're being forward-thinking. They're allowing consumption lounges. But to Jenny's point, it's a pretty lackluster experience if the only thing you can do is crack open a can of cannabis and you're not going to be able to smoke anything.
I could go to any restaurant and do this and order my meal in any restaurant and pop a gummy if I want. No one's going to know the difference. And even if I wanted a cannabis beverage, I could easily go to any restaurant and just when the waiter walks away, pour my cannabis beverage into an empty glass and boom, off to the races. You know what I mean? Like this is the most dumbest thing ever. And Maryland, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
That's pretty dumb.
Just saying. You have any thoughts on this, Jesse?
Yeah, the best consumption lounge there is the Rainbow Room outside.
The Rainbow Room was pretty epic for a number of years. I agree with you on that part, Jesse. It was,
we probably got to not screen that out of consideration for their alcohol license.
Well,
it's if you know
knowledge.
What's that, Jesse?
That it's common knowledge. You know.
Yeah, it is fairly common knowledge. I think that is pretty much fair. You know what I mean?
I think they must have it. They have to have a deal with the authorities to have allowed that to go on for how many years?
I mean,
mute Jenny, mute.
Since the early 2000s. Since the early 2000s.
Shut up! If you stop it, I won't have to say it.
It's been a long time.
Since the early 2000s, that's been going on. And you know what? Oh, that's funny. Brian Dombrowski in the chat. He says this is GTI's beverage carve out.
Well, and here's the other thing. And I've known Brian for a while, and I don't know that he's incorrect on this. Because
I think he's right about that.
One of the other things about this article is it said that it would not allow hemp-derived beverages. So if you're a big MSO and you want to do a incremental consumption lounge and you don't want hemp-derived beverages to eat up the nascent little market share for cannabis-derived cannabinoid beverages, then that probably makes sense for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm this operator, right, and I'm setting up this business model, you know what I would do? I would go get me a bunch of fucking tinctures or water solubles. I would get a really nice mixologist to come in there and make me some very nice mocktail recipes, and I would kind of do more of a bougie, here, you can have your very nicely garnished, very lightly medicated, and make sure that those are, because you can regulate those, and it's easy.
Your little stiletto stoner kind of bourgeois.
Yeah, because I mean, who else is going to go here? You know what I mean? Guys who are trying to bring their freaking motherships in and oh, that was a kickback to the past. Blast down Graham Dabs aren't going to go. Come on.
Well, here's my question, Jenny Beth. Because even Nick brings that up in the chat. Are they allowing for vaporization devices? Could you order a volcano and vaporize flower there? No. There's no combustion.
Nothing. No vapes. No nothing. No nothing. No nada. You can't take your leftovers.
You can't even have your Zen vape?
No.
Yarrow, your kids are not going to want to go to this place.
Don't they all equate?
Good. I don't want my kids to go any place like that. They're kids.
What's that, Jesse?
Don't they equate vaporization with smoking? The normal public doesn't concern.
Yeah, but it's interesting because vaporization is not considered as part of in regards with it's not enforceable under smoking ordinances. So you can vaporize and still have a smoking ordinance in place in a lot of these places. And so that's a big differentiator, and I would be interested to read the language of how Maryland is not allowing for vaporization since that's not a combustible method.
Somebody should try it. See if
it's a no for me, dog. I did a little research because when I do my articles, I usually try to pull some research, and so they're actually saying no vaping, no smoking, no nada. That's why I said more than what's in the article.
Yeah, I mean, it's just challenging for me because I don't think that there's a policy rationale for the guideline that they're creating and then announcing that they have consumption lounges. Just doesn't make any sense. If an entrepreneur is willing to put in robust HVAC and filtration measures, why shouldn't people be able to smoke? And I think, and I say this often, the cannabis industry just wants to be treated like any other industry. We don't want special preference. We just don't want to be treated like the redheaded stepchild. Our tax structure is not.
Whoa.
Take it personal. We have therapy. We have therapy at 10:30, but we still got a little bit more time. So when that comes to taxes, we are not being treated with parity. We look at the tax structure for the wine industry compared with the cannabis industry, we see exponentially different tax structures. And when it comes to wanting to be treated with parity, if a state has cigar lounges, and if somebody can go to a cigar lounge and sit back in a big, comfy leather armchair and relax with their friends, then they should be able to have the same guidelines because smoke is smoke is smoke.
Yeah,
all smoke is smoke, and there's no smoking in Maryland consumption.
Yeah.
So
I'll just no, not yet. We gotta work on that. We gotta put some sounds on the stream deck. Maybe we'll possibly get that done this week, but no guarantees. No.
And to be clear, even though I say smoke is smoke is smoke, there are studies that actually show that cannabis smoke is less harmful than tobacco smoke. And I'm not a scientist. I don't play a doctor on TV. If I'm lucky, I get to play doctor elsewhere. But this is not a place where we're being treated with parity. We just want to be treated like any other industry.
Nope.
That's it.
Anna Lewis in the chat, she says, treated like any other business. That's all. Yep. So there's a lot of mutual agreement on that, Yarrow, all the way around. That is for sure. And on that, I guess we're gonna roll into our final commercial, and we are gonna be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Yep, there we go. And we are back, you guys. Oh, man. So I got two final stories for you guys. One of them is super triggering. The other one is interesting, you guys. So I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this, because high cannabis use is linked to increased mortality in colon cancer patients, you guys. Research at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine have found that individuals with colon cancer and a documented history of high cannabis use were more than 20 times more likely to die within 5 years of diagnosis compared to those without such a history. And a quote, the study adds to a growing body of evidence suggesting that heavy cannabis use may have under-recognized impacts on the immune system, mental health, and treatment behaviors, all of which could influence cancer outcomes, said a lead author, Raphael Cuomo, PhD and associate professor in the Department of Anesthesiology at USC San Diego School of Medicine. I probably murdered that word. I'm sorry, you guys. The research team drew on electronic health records from more than 1,000 colon cancer patients treated across the University of California health system system between 2012 and 2024, and they evaluated how cancer outcomes differed based on patients' documented cannabis use before diagnosis, controlling for age, sex, and indicators of disease severity, such as tumor staging and cancer biomarkers. The analysis found, one, that patients with a history of cannabis use disorder, better known as CUD, had a substantially higher 5-year mortality rate, 55.88%, compared to patients without CUD at 5.05%. And two, they also found that patients diagnosed with CUD prior to cancer diagnosis were 24.4 times more likely to die within 5 years of diagnosis compared to those without CUD. While some laboratory studies have shown anti-tumor effects from certain cannabis compounds, the authors note the real-world use is more complex given the increasing prevalence and social acceptance of cannabis use. They also emphasize the need for further investigate its long-term effects in medically vulnerable populations. In a quote, they say, high cannabis use is often associated with depression, anxiety, and other challenges that may comprise a patient's ability to engage fully with cancer treatment, said Cuomo, who is also a member of the UC San Diego Moores Cancer Center. In an additional quote, he says, however, this isn't about vilifying cannabis. It's about understanding the full range of its impacts, especially for people facing serious illnesses. We hope these findings encourage more research and more nuanced conversations about how cannabis interacts with cancer biology and care, he says. The study was published online in the Annals of Epidemiology, and no funding or conflicts of interest were reported for this study, you guys. Well, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. You know, colon cancer and cannabis apparently increase your risk. What do you guys have to say about this?
Oh, I've got a ton to say.
Go for it, Jesse.
I just looked up the Annals of Epidemiology, or the Annals as it should be pronounced.
Oh, I couldn't help myself.
Annals.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's colon cancer, so it's the Annals.
Yeah.
It's colon.
Yeah, come on, Jesse.
Jason just adjusted for physiology.
Yeah,
he's making a scientific-based mispronunciation.
I try, bro.
I was pointing it out.
Mm-hmm.
Explaining the joke for the audience. So first of all, this Annal of Epidemiology isn't one of the highest rated journals of medicine. So the chance that this study is not done very well is fairly high.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than zero. Let's put it that way. And then I just went and read the introduction, and they're stating that it's marked that cannabis use disorder is marked by problematic use and is linked to other comorbidities, mm-hmm. cognitive dysfunction, respiratory complications, and immune system dysregulation. They're not saying that those things are necessarily causal. They're just saying they're correlated. And we know that in science, correlation does not equal causation.
Yeah.
Right. But they're treating this like it is causation, mm-hmm. Even though it's clearly just correlation. And they're not going into what are the other factors that these people might have had. Did they also smoke tobacco? Did they also drink alcohol? What mm-hmm. were their diets like? What were their physical lives like? Did they exercise? Did they not exercise? So this is just a big excuse for reefer madness. It continues on. And I wish Dr. Jean Talleyrand was here, because he would definitely flay this article, I know, mm-hmm. and he would have articles and other science to quote, showing that this is a joke.
Jason.
Yeah.
Jesse is just basically saying that any article about the colon stinks.
Yeah. He's just saying it's a shit article, Yarrow. Exactly. I think you muted yourself, Yarrow.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's back.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
No,
okay.
There's no muting me. There's no mute button.
We don't want you to mute, Yarrow. We enjoy hearing what you got to say. Yeah.
I'm the First Amendment on steroids. Mm-hmm. And your mispronunciations are epic, right? We love the way they add flavor and flair. And it's not that you don't understand and haven't mastered the English language. It's that you have a lot of a language to read through, and there's only so many hours in the day to prep for America's best daily news show on hemp and cannabis, right? So we get that. But what you started off with before you went to the anals instead of the annals was you said high cannabis use is linked to increased mortality and in colon cancer patients. And I knew that also was not a misstatement because people who smoke a lot of weed don't take shit.
Yeah, exactly. They take the moral high road. You know, come on, Yarrow. You know, we try to make this entertaining. This whole show entertaining. You know what I mean? Oh, and you know, all the links are available to read on our website, so people can check those out there. And you know what I'm saying? See all of my epic blunders.
So you know, the thing is that, you know, it's funny because it's not funny. They're the good cancers and the bad cancers. For those of you who've ever seen like a Curb Your Enthusiasm. There are some cancers that are considered not terrible, and then there are some cancers that are really considered terrible. And colon cancer is typically considered a pretty terrible cancer to have to fight and hope to survive. As Jesse pointed out, you know, maybe this isn't the most esteemed group of doctors studying this. It is UC San Diego, right? Like, we're not talking about University of Niger. No disrespect. Yeah. I'm just saying the UC system in California is pretty reputable when it comes to producing studies and data. So because of that, for me, I'd put a little bit more weight on the findings because I do believe that, especially in California, they're more likely to take into account some of those things that Jesse talked about. And maybe they did and maybe they didn't until I actually get deep into the white paper, which I'm not going to do on this article. I really couldn't say. But, you know, just because something has beneficial properties doesn't mean that it has properties that aren't beneficial. So it wouldn't be news to me for someone to suggest that while cannabis can do a lot of good, that there might also be some things where it's not so good. And I don't think that takes away from cannabis's place in the plant medicine toolbox, or that it has a promise for innovative novel cancer treatments, or that we should have federal legalization and we should be able to study it here in a way that's unencumbered. But you know, I mean, a lot of things that we take have not just positive effects. There's many things you can take in small amounts that can be helpful for you, and if you take it in big amounts, not so much.
Steve Blessingham in the chat. Go ahead, Jesse.
I would argue against that, Yarrow, because the cornerstone of the argument is them even using the term CUD, and which has been shown to be basically a term almost across the board. So the fact that they're putting all their science on this one terminology, and then they're not looking at these other comorbidities and seeing where they're coming from. They're just conflating them, as the introduction to the study clearly said. It's propaganda.
It's propaganda piece.
It's propaganda, and unfortunately, it might come out of a great institution, but they didn't do their job well.
Fair enough. Steve Blessingham in the chat, he says, very true, Yarrow, but I'd still like to know how many Twinkies those people are eating a week.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Well, this was a fun little shitstorm of a story, you guys, and I have another shitstorm for you guys. Because, man, oh, man, you know, it's Monday, and, you know, I'm going to leave you guys... Sorry to leave you guys on this sad kind of story, but I think it's definitely, you guys are definitely going to want to know about this, because the DOJ attorney wants a DC dispensary over proximity, or excuse me, they are warning a DC dispensary over proximity to schools, you guys. That's right. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Edward R. Martin Jr., has issued a letter to Green Theory, a licensed cannabis dispensary located at 4828 MacArthur Boulevard Northwest, expressing concern that its operation violates federal law due to its proximity to several area schools. How about the fact that they're selling cannabis and that doesn't violate federal law? I'm confused by this, but nonetheless, we'll continue on. Martin is known for defending and attending the earlier speech. The January 6 rioters accused of storming the U.S. Capitol. A Politico article referred to him as a lawyer and longtime conservative activist. President Donald J. Trump's positioned Martin as temporary head of the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. in January, where he has been in charge of dismissing many of the defendant's cases. In the letter sent today, Martin stated his concern for the safety of children, noting that the dispensary appears to be operating within 1,000 feet of Our Lady of Victory Catholic School, the River School St. Patrick's Episcopal Day School, and Little Ivy's preschool. He emphasized the existence of numerous federal laws, including the Controlled Substances Act, that govern and often prohibit the distribution and possession of cannabis. It is unclear why Green Theory was targeted, as multiple licensed dispensaries are within 1,000 feet of a school in D.C. And Martin reminded Green Theory's owners that the Department of Justice has the authority to enforce federal law even when activities are permitted under local regulations. He further warned that individuals and entities involved in operating or facilitating such dispensaries could face federal criminal prosecution and civil enforcement actions. The U.S. Attorney's letter concluded by posing 3 specific questions to Green Theory's owners regarding their awareness of the federal law, communication with federal law enforcement, and documentation of their compliance with federal regulations, you guys. With this letter, I want to know the following, he says. 1. Are you aware of the federal laws related to marijuana dispensaries and their locations near schools? Now, first of all, I never knew that the federal government had any restrictions as far as when it comes to schools, but that's totally news to me. And have you addressed these issues with federal law enforcement officials? Well, of course they haven't. Come on, you guys. Come on, get with the program. And he also asks, can you produce documentation regarding your compliance with federal law? Well, obviously, they're selling a controlled one substance, so obviously there's no compliance with the federal law, dude. Come on, get with the program. And a quote says, I am concerned that you are in violation of federal laws, which are intended to protect children. And to that end, the need to address this issue is serious, he says. The Outlaw Report reached out to Green Theory, who declined to comment at this time, and the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration and Mayor Muriel Bowser's office have not yet responded to requests for comment on the implications of the letter on the overall cannabis market in the district. And this follows controversy last year that was generated by a parent group called 1,000 Feet Group, who publicly came after Green Theory after their formal protest to the dispensary failed with the ABC board, you guys. Well, that's right there tells you exactly who's behind all this and who's getting this guy to write this letter. And oh man, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I just went and looked this up. 21 U.S. Code 860, distributing cannabis near schools within 1,000 feet is a serious federal offense.
So there actually is a federal code involved with this.
Yeah, there's a federal law about
Interesting.
Well, because distributing cannabis already is a federal law, right?
Yeah.
But then there's an extra penalty if you're distributing.
Is that the language that's tied in with, like, you know, when you go to a school and they have a sign up that says this is a drug-free zone?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So 21 USC US Code 860.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So they are. It is kind of funny that they're in Washington, D.C. and doing that. Although, interestingly, also I just looked up the D.C. local law is 400 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
So why the local laws are not matching the federal law on that is really interesting.
Yeah. What do you got to say, Yarrow? It's a nothing burger, huh? What do you think these guys are going to do? Do you think they should respond to the letter? I'd pretend it got lost in the mail.
I've learned the hard way. It's probably better to always run at threats and address things and not let things fester, because sometimes a $2 problem becomes a $20 problem, becomes a $20,000 problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And this patchwork of normalization and destigmatization and the way in which this country is just like completely little facets and pockets of like things happening quickly and things happening super slow and places where it's like no big deal and grandma's already eating gummies versus places where you can't, consumption lounge won't allow for smoking. Yeah. It's just really odd to see the pace of progress and the way in which this is unfolding.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, Yarrow. It is super interesting. I do think that the reason that these this group got singled out does all have to do with that parental organization, because the only thing that they mention is how they're trying to protect the kids, and so this totally seems targeted by this activist mothers group, this group of Karens.
That's always how it goes. Don't piss off the moms.
No.
Look, I think we are all aligned as Americans that we want to protect kids. Yeah. The question 100%. Is how do we get there, and what are the most pressing threats, and what are the solutions around that? And if we're going to use the word protecting kids, if fentanyl isn't in the very next sentence, then maybe we have different priorities. And that's not to suggest that consumption of cannabis by minors isn't a real issue. It's not to suggest that the science isn't already in that says the brain doesn't stop developing until the end of age 24. But it is to say that we are facing a lot of threats, and that this generation faces many threats that we didn't grow up facing. And the question is, what are our priorities? Can we align on what our priorities are? I think for me, fentanyl is enemy number one for this next generation. And when we think about the difference in the harms and outcomes, we really need to focus on the greatest threats first. But that's just me.
Fair.
Yeah,
fair
I would even pin another tail on that donkey, as we started this show with. Is that cell phones are one of the greatest drugs, and the use of these phones and how it's impacting our youth is the biggest drugs and the biggest influences of dopamine. Dopaminergic system of these children, and it's affecting them. And then on top of that, you're worried about a dispensary that's within 1,000 feet, which is almost a quarter mile. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. And then, but they can get on Snapchat or get on Telegram or Signal and order a cannabis vape, have it delivered right to the school, and walk outside and pick it up.
Exactly.
It's just hypocrisy, and it just shows that these people don't even know what's going on. So whatever this parents group is, these moms, they just don't understand what the real problems are.
They need to be moms against the internet.
Between pinning the tail on the donkey and the elephants in the living room, we have completely made sure that we've covered all partisan cliches.
Fair enough, you guys. Well, that was fun and interesting, and thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank yous to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here, and thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day, and thank you to Cloud Media partners Anthony out there in the metaverse somewhere. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show. And we are off.